Hey guys, how's it going? It's Mike from Off-Grid Hawaii. In today's video, I want to tell you guys a little bit about mulch crops and what we're doing here as far as growing them. Been using them since we started way back, using things like pigeon pea and perennial peanut. Those things have been growing here for quite some time. There's also some new ones that we've acquired, such as this Mexican sunflower, which I'm really loving, and it grows really fast, so I plan on spreading it a lot more throughout the property. But yeah, to tell you a little bit about the history of using them, when we first heard about mulch crops and nitrogen fixers and support plants, we thought, oh, we just got to plant these and we won't ever have to fertilize our trees anymore, which didn't really end up being the case, because I did a little experiment on a patch of papayas where I had like a row of papayas spaced, evenly, maybe 8 feet apart, and then tons of pigeon pea. And my goal was to exclusively fertilize the papayas with just pigeon pea. And I grew them to like 10 feet tall, chop and drop, laid it there. But actually, they didn't really grow as well as the ones that I was using fertilizer on, the chicken manure and mulch. So I got a little bit discouraged that it wasn't working that great. So we still always grew them and used them mostly in combination with the fertilizer, the chicken manure, mulch, county mulch. The way we've had success with the mulch crops is just by using them in combination with the chicken manure and the county mulch. So I always would layer the chicken manure first, then I'd go around and chop stuff and just lay it around, and then I'd cover it with the county mulch, just kind of seal everything in and hold all that nitrogen down into the soil, and that seemed to work great. But there is one thing about that I don't like, and it's that we're just keep continuing to bring external inputs into the property, and that's really not what permaculture is about. It's totally okay to do that in the beginning like we are, just because our soil, we have an inch of soil at most in places. It's really rocky here, nothing really to hold the nutrients in, so we really needed to bring external inputs such as the county mulch, the chicken manure, various different soils, cinder. But now, since being here almost 4 years, I think I'm ready to wean off that stuff and try to use what mulch crops we have here, and also plant a whole bunch more and just try to use less external inputs and just use what we have here. And that should be the final goal of any permaculture design, is to get everything all set, and then just the whole place will feed itself, and all you have to do once in a while is go around and clear the mulch crops and put them on the ground. It feeds the soil and stuff. So that's my goal in the future, and I'm gonna be starting that now. I've decided not to go get as much county mulch. Still gonna bring it in a little bit for where I need it, but not having to go get the county mulch every month and spread it, with the wheelbarrow and fertilizing. That takes a lot of time. So all that time that I would have been spending doing that, I'm going to focus my energies on planting more mulch crops, support crops, companion plants, and we'll see how that works. All the trees are pretty big now. They don't really need a whole lot of fertilizer, so hopefully just providing them with the mulch that I grow here will be enough. I think it will be. I'm pretty excited for this next chapter of our food forest, because it will actually allow me to go in and strategically place these plants in a way that helps the trees, feeds the trees, but also makes it look a little nicer here. Right now we have a lot of open spaces, and those are spaces that could be growing mulch crops that just aren't, and I'm constantly having to weed whack, so hopefully I'll have to weed whack less too. But anyway, I'm gonna show you guys around the place and show you different mulch crops that have been growing here, and ones, maybe new ones that we just got, and let me tell you a little bit about them and what they're good for. So yeah. So here's the first one, since it was right behind me. It's a Mexican sunflower, and as you can see, it attracts bees, which help pollinate the place, But the main thing this thing is good for is these leaves here are super high in nitrogen, more than double the amount of most plants. So they're a really good source of food for the trees. This is commonly used in combination with vetiver grass. This would be somewhat of like what we've been using the chicken manure for, as the high nitrogen, and then the vetiver grass would be the carbon source, which you'd lay on top of it. This one's gotten quite big, and I have just planted this probably 2-3 months ago, and all of my cuttings from here have been from this tree. So really easy to propagate this. You just take a stick from one tree and you pop it in the ground, like just a stick, and then new branches come out. And kind of want to prune it a lot because these branches will get so heavy that they fall over and break. But if you prune it, then they'll branch out and the plant will have a better structure. I like to prune all of my mulch crops with pruners. That way you make a nice clean cut and it doesn't damage the plant too much. Perennial Peanut. It's a ground cover that we like to use here, and it's great for putting around trees to keep other weeds from coming up, and also is a nitrogen fixer, so it helps fertilize the trees. There are some other weeds in here that you just gotta pull out and get them out. What should I say? So for all the new trees I plant here, I like to start a couple cuttings around the tree. So I'd plant the tree and then, maybe like 2 feet around it, put the cuttings from this. And to plant the perennial peanut, you just take a cutting from one that's already growing. I like to pull the leaves off because they usually die anyway, and then just leave one leaf at the top. I already got a couple roots on this one, so I would just stick this in the ground next to the fruit tree that we're growing, and before you know it, the whole ground will be covered with it. So right here behind me and right here in front of me, we have some of our pigeon pea. Pigeon pea is a nitrogen fixing bush that grows about 10 to 15 feet tall and wide. It's excellent as a mulch crop. It also has an edible pea, which you can cook in many different ways. You can make dal, you can cook them a little bit green and eat it sort of like edamame. We don't do it much because it just takes really long to shuck them. I suppose eating it as edamame doesn't take very long. It would take long as you're eating it, but anyway, we use them mainly as a mulch crop. Whenever they get really tall, we'll just cut them back and feed them to our fruit trees. The way pigeon pea is propagated is by the seed. So once these seeds are mature, you can take them, and what I like to do is make a good amount of soil and put about 4 seeds in there. Because we don't have much soil, that's why I'm adding soil, but if you did have a good amount of soil where you're planting them, you probably don't need to do that. But we did find out that when we planted them the first time, we didn't do it with much soil and they didn't do really good, and it was definitely because the amount of soil we had put there was not adequate for the plant. So they do produce their own nitrogen and fertilize themselves that way, but they do need a good amount of soil to get started, which we didn't have, so they didn't do good. But now that we know that, we're doing much better planting them and growing them. I also did get this one beetle that was boring into the stem and killing a lot of them, but it seems that that beetle is not around anymore. So we like to plant our pigeon pea close to the fruit tree, but not too close because then it might, shade it out and sort of like choke it. So we like to plant our pigeon pea about 8 feet from the fruit tree that we're growing. That way it's not too far that we have to chop it and then bring it. So 8 feet is plenty of room so it's not choking it out, but it's not too far where you're walking across the whole yard to put it where you want it. So here we have some Crotalaria. It's very similar to the pigeon pea in that it is a nitrogen fixing bush. It doesn't seem to grow as big. The biggest ones I've seen are about 8 feet over here. So, 6 to 8 feet, whereas the pigeon pea was like 10 to 15. This one grows a lot denser. The leaves seem to be way greener. It seems like the leaves are more nitrogen rich. Not really sure. But they also produce this pod, which rattles like this. They call them rattle pods. So you can So unlike the pigeon pea, these pods are not edible. So one way of propagating it would be to just grab all these seeds and then toss them. You may have a little bit of success doing that, but if you really want to ensure that you're getting one where you want it, it's best to make a little pile of soil and plant them and cover it in mulch, and then they'll grow pretty easily. They'll grow. These don't seem to require as much soil as the pigeon pea, so that may be a benefit. If you don't have a lot of soil, these might do better for you. Really though, when it comes down to which one I'm going to use for where, it all depends on the space. So if it is somewhere that is smaller space and I want a thicker like hedge, I'd probably use these. If I want more light to come through the canopy and something that grows a little bit bigger, I might use the pigeon pea. But it all comes down to getting familiar with each plant so that you know where each plant fits the best in your design. So now I want to talk a little bit about the grasses that we use here. One of them being lemongrass, which is right here. It smells like citrus, like lemon. That's why it's called lemongrass. So we got the lemongrass, and the other one we use is the vetiver. The lemongrass seems to grow way more prolifically than the vetiver, so it's just really spread throughout here like crazy. Good uses for this in permaculture design would be to make somewhat edges with it. So if you had a guild, you can surround the whole thing with lemongrass, and that'll help keep weeds coming in and soil that you've put into the guild from coming out, so it acts as a barrier. It grows so quick too that you can cut this every couple weeks, maybe month, and you'll get a good amount of grass, and you can just lay it down and keep building soil that way. It's not really talked about much using it to cover something like the Mexican sunflower, but I've been trying it lately, and I mean it's the same concept. Like a really common use in permaculture here, a lot of people talk about using the Mexican sunflower as the nitrogen and then putting vetiver over top of it as the carbon. And it has a lot of silica and it holds nutrients and stuff. The lemongrass I don't think does quite as good of a job because it is a softer blade than the vetiver, but I do use it in that way and it seems to work almost as good. But I tried researching this before I made the video and I couldn't find anything about it, so maybe you guys could comment and let me know what you think about using this as to cover something more nitrogen rich like the Mexican sunflower, sort of using it as a top layer of mulch. Yeah, so the other grass we have here is the vetiver, which doesn't seem to be growing that great. I've had it for over 2 years, and it just kind of, I had 2 clumps and they grew pretty big, and I'm spreading them out now, and I'm using a lot more soil. I'm not sure why they're not growing as fast as the lemongrass. My one theory is that vetiver likes to go real deep, and we don't really have the depth here. They must be just hitting rocks, and they're not able to penetrate deep into the soil because there isn't any. I'm pretty committed in making it work here, so I've been spreading it out and giving it more soil and giving it more attention. I really want a lot of that to grow because it is a good top layer. And the one thing that was good about the mulch, the county mulch, is that everything looked nice like after the maintenance. So the mulch would cover around the tree and it would look really nice. That's one thing that is a little harder when you're making your own mulch, because if you don't have a wood chipper, you're not getting like this really nice looking mulch. So when you're laying all your chop and drop down around it, it doesn't look very nice. But if you were to cover it with something like the vetiver, that could be a nice look. So that's what I'm hoping. So now that we've talked about different grasses that would grow here, ground covers, bushes, the one last thing I want to talk about is the mulch crop trees, the nitrogen fixing trees that we're growing. This is one of them. It's ice cream bean. It grows about 25-30 feet. I've seen really big ones though. They may even grow way bigger than that. We don't really ever intend on getting them that big. We'll be cutting them back. But we are using them as a longer term mulch crop. So the bushes like the pigeon pea and the Crotalaria, we plan on phasing out once the fruit trees get really big and kind of occupy that space that the bushes were growing. These ones we've spaced further apart from the trees so that they'll last up until like full maturity of the trees, the fruit trees. In some places, maybe we'll just keep growing the ice cream beans too. They do produce an edible bean, ice cream bean. It tastes alright, it's kind of fun to eat. It comes in this long pod there. You open it up, it kind of looks like cotton candy, but it's kind of wet, somewhat sweet, so they are good. The main reason we're growing them though is for the nitrogen fixing and the mulch. So the ice cream bean is very easily propagated by seed. If you find a pod, they're most likely already going to be sprouting in the pod. You just put it in some soil and boom, they grow very easily. So here it is, the last one I want to talk about, and this is the Glarus Idia, commonly known as in permaculture the living fence post. So as you can see, these branches grow very straight, and the way it's propagated is you take a branch about this thick and maybe like 3 feet, and you stick it in the ground. It's like a fence post, right? So you could just stick these in the ground and those will be all your fence posts, and then later on you go along and put the fence up, either wire or fencing. I'm not really using it for that purpose. I'm using it more for the mulch and the nitrogen fixing. We did try to grow this a long time ago, and we had maybe like 6, 7, 8 maybe cuttings of it. None of them survived. So what we did, we just took the OO bar and we stuck it in the ground and put them in there. They seemed to start growing, but then they just died. So I'm thinking they needed a little bit more soil. So this time when I went to plant them, I did the same thing with the OO bar, but then I put some soil in there, some nice soil to get them started, maybe keep them more wet, I'm not sure, or seal it in there. And out of 4, I think I got 3 to propagate, and only one of them was really big. The other ones were kind of small, and they still started growing. So really happy, and I want to spread this one throughout the property a lot. Just waiting on these branches to be big enough for cuttings. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys have learned something, and definitely think about planting other species besides the fruit trees that you want to grow. It's going to help reduce the amount of things you bring in, and it's also going to provide a good ecosystem for all the beneficial bugs, birds, keep away pests. Maybe your trees won't get attacked as much by some of the things around here like the beetles. I definitely suggest planting these things at the same time as you plant your fruit trees. You know, I did not plant anything out when I first planted. I wish I did, but the truth is I just didn't know anything when I first started. Now that I know much better, I can go in and kind of design the way I should have. But anyway, definitely get familiar with all the plants that I talked about, and even more, you know, do more research, find out more plants, figure out good places for them, where they would go good in your food forest and benefit your trees the most. Alright, so see ya.